welcome to the Building Men podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Meralda. Welcome to the Building Men podcast. My name is Dennis Meralda. Building Men is geared toward helping you become the strongest version of yourself, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Once again, I am joined by my younger brother, my best friend, physical trainer, motivational expert, mindset coach, anxiety expert, Anthony.
I love that. That was way better of an intro than before. And I responded this time too. You see how I was paying attention?
I'll tell you what, we're killing it already. This time there was not dead air after I introduced you.
I know. We are back, baby. We are back.
Anthony is back.
Anthony is back. We are getting Anthony back.
So the last time you were on here, we had a good time. I mean, it was really an interesting episode. You were really vulnerable and you put yourself out there in many different levels. And I talked to mom and dad afterwards, and did you know that they sat down together and they were like, they had a cup of tea in front of them, and they looked at each other and they were listening to us on the podcast as their sons. We kept
their relationship like it gave them a new meaning. I don't know the last time they sat down and did anything together that, wasn't watching a Netflix series or something.
They play tennis together. They do some workouts together, but sit down and listen. I pictured it was almost like the 1940s where the radio was on and Little Orphan Annie was on and the family was
like cross-legged by the radio, just listening intently to it.
I pictured Dad with a tight knee cross. Maybe there's a pipe in his mouth. He's got a jacket on. He's got glasses.
He's got a lot of buttons unbuttoned, obviously a lot of chest showing, but it was nice. It was horn. What do you say?
The gold chain and the Italian horn.
Exactly. I know. That's Make sure you're showing that off every time. But yeah, that was the cool part about it was that Dad said that he learned stuff about me and you and us that he had no idea. He didn't realize all the things that was going through my head, even Mom. And I told Mom everything, but even there were some things that she didn't realize how severe it was or how it was affecting me. So that was really cool. That was awesome. Just hearing those compliments from them when not that we look for that, but it was really nice to get that, kind of affirmation like, hey, you're doing a good job and we're onto something there, when we have our parents who, they're our biggest critics usually. So
I think they're our biggest critics, but I also feel like they're our biggest cheerleaders. And just the fact that they were sitting together and kind of going through the experience together. And, Mom said, let us know when you have another podcast out, because me and Dad are going to sit and listen to it together.
Yeah.
Maybe we can become, maybe a side hustle is marriage counselors as well, or,
whatever.
Counselors.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's great. It was awesome to see that. And it was so cool. Me being unscripted and not really worrying about what I was saying and being completely vulnerable allowed so many people to reach out to me and say how they felt the same way, or how, they realized they could connect with someone because they heard my story and felt like someone else went through that and they didn't know what they were going through. And now they felt like they could relate to them a little bit more. So that to me was the best part about it. I didn't know what I was saying half the time. I was just telling my story and how I felt. And that's really easy for me to talk about. Once I stopped trying to be something that I wasn't, it was easy to just keep going with it, It's
interesting in that persona that you try to put out that you think people want to hear, people want to see, and so it's this version of yourself that's so inauthentic. And we talked about this forever. I mean, I was living that way for such a long time, where I was trying to be something that I thought other people thought I should be in some weird way. So I was playing tricks with my mind all the time. Even I look behind you, and for those of you who are watching this on Instagram, I mean, first, your hair is just,
I was hoping we could talk about that, because I feel like my hair is immaculate right now, and I don't get it.
This flippy wave thing.
I know.
How long does that take? And what kind of blow dryer do you use? That's what I want to know.
The blow dryer it's not I just bought any blow dryer, but I do spend time, so I comb it back with the blow dryer. I think that's key, using the comb simultaneously with the blow dryer. That's important. I need to allot 30 minutes before my day starts if I really want to get the hair to pop. I have 2 different products for the hair. I'm not going to release them because I think
DM
I
you
want.
for special coaching prices and hair.
Yeah, that's another thing that we're gonna get into, and that's gonna have an extra charge to it. But yeah, I looked at myself and I was just like, this is gonna be a great day. This is gonna be really good. I got like the perfect drop over. I feel like
Is that what that's called, a
Superman.
drop over?
I don't know. I don't. I actually
Should be called a drop over now.
Yeah.
Even there's like one hair that's just like kind of down a little bit. It's well, leave it. No, it's like it's almost like you have like someone like an assistant next to you that like has your hair in a certain way.
Yeah, and I know, just sort of like we take a little break and then they go and just like adjust it and make sure I have the little piece that falls down every time. It's like
they're under the table right now. Is that what's going on? Is that what you have?
Yeah, just right.
That's why you're in such a good mood.
That's
so.
Yeah.
So if you ever pause, we know why now. If you do,
that's exactly why. Okay. Yes, couple adjustments. It's all good. It's all part of it.
We grew up and Dad was a big blow dryer guy. I mean, now that we're going on this dad journey, Dad was a big blow dryer guy. And I've been at your house enough when you're blow drying your hair that you make the same face that Dad makes, where you kind of like make that like, your nose goes down. Yeah, you're looking at yourself in the mirror and
and I'm like, you blast yourself directly in the face, almost to the point where it like cinches your eyebrows. You're doing it so abruptly and the heat is so aggressive. But listen, it's worth it. If the end product looks like this, I'm in.
And you're humble too. That's the best.
That's the most important thing. Humility. That's what we're actually getting into today.
It's so now that people are getting to know you a little bit on the podcast, the dichotomy that exists between you, the last time you were on and you were talking about this level of anxiety that you had and you were so worried about what everybody thought about you and, you had such low self-esteem to where you're like, look at my hair. Look at this. I'm not.
Yeah. I know, and that's like I feel like
the greatest like juxtaposition in the world. It's like
I know it's a beautiful thing, and it's not. It's like I feel like sometimes I like fake that to almost build up my confidence even more. Yeah. Like I tell myself these little things, like, dude, you look great. Look at that. Like, oh, you look phenomenal. And it's like not like I go around and do that. Like there was people on campus that I talked to. And they're like, looking like the way you look, I assume that you were going to be a douchebag, like you were just going to be like this cocky, arrogant, self-centered person. And I'm not that, you know what I mean? And so like, I feel like I want to like just because of the way that I look, and I'm not trying to like, stroke my ego here or say that I'm something or whatever, but like people look at me and they expect me to be something. And when they end up realizing that I'm a teddy bear and I'm very emotional and I'm very like, I want to get to know you, and I'm not like that. And I have all these, things that I'm worried about all the time. It kind of surprises people a lot,
Truth be told, you can be a douchebag.
I'm absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yes, I can. And once I feel comfortable, then I do tend to be a douchebag, but it's like strategic douchiness.
Douchebaggery.
Yes, exactly. So
it's so funny. I think about, and again, there was no, there was nothing we were going to talk about really today. I just figured we'd come on and just shoot the shit for a little bit. But I think about tonight's the draft, right? So we'll get together. We have this like thing with Aunt Mike Toth and my son, and we get together and we watch the draft and we do like picks and things like that with the draft. But I think about a couple times that you and I have gotten to like physical altercations over the years. Mm-hmm. Usually, there was alcohol involved in most of those experiences. A lot of them were after watching a football game or something like that, and we were in the same space. And it's funny, we've probably gotten to what would you say, like maybe 3 or 4, more serious fights, but we just have this like thing. We just won't punch each other in the face. Like
it's a hard wrestling match,
like hard grappling.
And it wasn't. The funny thing is, all of them weren't out of anger. What like the one with the Giants in the playoff game when they were going to go to the Super Bowl. We were so excited and we started like hugging each other and getting jacked up, and all of a sudden like one of us just like braced, like it was like, oh, and then next thing you know, we're on the ground, like your nose was bleeding, like we're literally in your living room. And this is when you lived in a smaller place, that townhouse. And we're bumping into shit. And like, we were excited. We were like all jacked up. Yeah. And then we ended up going for 10 minutes wrestling in there. It's like,
we're like 2 rhinoceroses just locking horns or something. It's just, cause we're both big dudes. Yeah, but I thought about that as you were talking about, the douchebaggery. There were a couple times that we did go after it and people around crying, "Stop it!
Yeah, please. Yeah, I mean, it would definitely
Children,
not.
think about the children."
We're doing it at like your daughter's, it's like her graduation or something. And it's like there's all families there and we're in the garage wrestling, and it was like probably not the best, but it's all out of love,
And we'd shake hands afterwards and,
Yeah.
this and that. But,
And, we're not going to talk about that. I won most of them. We don't have to get into that, but I just want it on the record. So
I don't know if there was ever a clear determination of that. In your mind, I believe you've won every fight you've ever been in. I think in your mind you have. But that's it. Again, back to the confidence. It's important that you tell yourself that in the mirror when you're blow drying your hair. You won.
That's right. Yep. All of them.
So
we're not even going to get into that, but okay.
So anyway, as we're getting ready to come on today, I just got done with another interview, and one of the things, I'll post it after I post this one, but one of the things I started to talk about was identity with the guy. His name is Ian DeMello. He's this like badass like dancer MC guy who does this motivational movement mindset coaching, and he started talking about identity. And it's something that I wanted to bring up with you today was about identity. And because last week when we were talking, or whenever that was, 2 weeks ago, we started talking, when you were identifying yourself, you were saying like the thing with anxiety was became like your superpower almost. Like you were going to take that superpower that you had and like make it work for you in different situations.
Right.
And so the reason why I thought about it today was when I think about identity, and it's something I talked with Greg Lewis about as well. Like he identified himself as a basketball player, and when that doesn't exist anymore, when he couldn't play, like what happens? So for such a long time, my identity was based around being a principal. My identity was based around like how I thought other people saw me as this job that had like some level of prestige to it, I guess. And I also based my identity around how I saw other people, how I thought other people saw me. And the thing that I realized was the mirror that I was looking into was this broken mirror. It wasn't a true representation of myself. And so I was thinking about bringing that idea up to you today about identity and how you see yourself. And if you're looking at yourself in a true way, or if you're looking at this like false version or this broken version of yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I feel like there's so many different ways we could go about that. But I also, just looking back to what, like your life, part of one of the reasons that almost like got you into, not that you didn't want to go down this path, but part of it had to do with you almost proving dad that you could do it in a sense. You know what I mean? Because remember the conversation that he had with you being, owning his, taking over his company, and you're never going to make any money doing what you want to do, which you wanted to be, in the educational system. You wanted to work with kids. You wanted to do that. So like part of it almost wasn't even for the right, if you look at it that way, it almost wasn't for the best reasons, because it's like, I'm going to show him, there was a little bit of that was involved with it, where it was like, I'll show him, I'll do it. And you did it, you know what I mean? But then it's like, it's also, it puts you in a weird position later on, because then who are you doing it for? Are you doing it for proof to others that you can do it, or are you doing it for yourself, for the kids, for contribution, for things like that, and for me, I feel like it's ever changing what my identity is, and I always based it around money, because to me, I feel like growing up the way that we did, it was like, if you don't have a money, or like the reason why dad did what he did was he didn't like his job. He talked about it every day, how he didn't enjoy it. But he did it because we had nice things and we could go places. How many times did you hear that growing up? Like, do you want all this stuff that I have? Do you want to be able to have the luxury of going on vacations? Well, then you got to bust your ass and you got to work. You got to do all this stuff. Not that that's a bad thing. But that made me think that like a lot of I was never content with where I was, because I wasn't making the money. And I didn't even know what that money was. I didn't know what like the amount that it was that I needed to be happy. I just knew I wasn't getting enough. And then so I was bitter and pissed and like upset the whole time, because I was just thinking that I'm getting screwed over in a way by somebody, you know, and I need to get more, 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 more. And it was like, is that really going to lead to happiness in the end? Probably not, you know?
And there's so much there. One I want to think about is the initial about that, you know, the comment that he had with me. And I still remember when I decided to change my major to go into education, the thing that he said was, do you understand, like, if you live on a teacher's salary, you could live below the poverty line if you want to have a family. And I just had this moment where I started getting into teaching because I love to coach. I mean, ultimately, that's what I love to do, is work with people and coach. So teaching was the avenue to be able to accomplish that in the most, you know, the way that made the most sense. So when he said that to me, I just remember thinking, like, well, is this true? Is this real? Should I move in that direction? And but at the same respect, you know, once I got into it, I just had this like drive. But my drive was always, my identity was based on like, I wanted the next step. I was never content with where I was. So once I became a teacher, I wanted to become a chairperson. Then I wanted to get my master's. Then I wanted to become an assistant principal. Then a principal. Then like, what was next? A superintendent. And it was just this constant chase for, I don't know if it was like status. There was a financial piece to it. But if you're basing your happiness on money, when is it ever enough? Like people that are millionaires, it's like, well, I need to make 10 million. Then once you make 10 million, then I need to make 50 million. And if you're constantly in that spot of chasing this number or this perception of what you're going to feel like when, you know, you get to that point, then what's next? Or worse, what happens if the stock market crashes and you lose all that shit and your identity is based on something that can be taken away from you?
Right.
So
you have nothing.
You love what you're doing, and you can wake up being like, my identity is based on my happiness and serving other people and feeling grateful and trying to inspire people. That's not shit that people can take away from you.
But we live in a society where you need X amount of money in order to survive, right? Things cost money for you to provide for your family, for you to get food on the table, for you to have a roof over your head. You need money. Granted, that money doesn't define you. And in my opinion, if you don't have, like, because some people will be like, if you're working for money, you just, you know, you work for spreading love and doing this and it'll come to you. And it's like, that's all well and good. But it's also like, if you don't have a good starting point, it's really hard to see it like that because you're living with the sense of like survival, right? And we never had that. So we don't know what that's like to be living paycheck to pay. Well, I mean, I have done that on my own, but I'm saying like there was never a point where I was living on the street or anything like that. So I can't speak for people who have gone through that. But I also feel like you need to have a good sense of values and a good belief system. Like you have a good foundation when you start this. So like it's rooted back to your values. It's rooted back to your truth, right? The reason why you're doing this, because it can't be like the money is going to bring me that peace in my life, because it's never going to bring you that peace. The peace is already there. Like you're already fulfilled with who you are and you as a person. You feel like very confident in who you are and grounded in that sense. And then the money is just like a part of it. You know, that's just the journey that you're going on, and things come your way and it comes and it goes. And like, you know, money fluctuates and it goes up and down. But imagine if that's all you live by, then whatever's in your bank account or whatever you get paid, that's going to dictate how you feel. Like that's awful. You know, that's a terrible way to think. And then it's like, and again, just like you said, when is it enough? I don't think it ever is. And you keep searching for that and searching for that versus having, you know, something that you hold true to you that no one can take, and no materialistic item is changing that at all, if that makes sense. So.
And you get that where if you're working for that next thing, whatever it is, the car, the house, the phone, whatever it might be, once you get it, like you have this feeling of needing it. And once you get it, there's this like void that happens. Like, okay, now I'm not needing that anymore. You don't really appreciate whatever it is that you were looking for. But I also think it's, if you're moving towards what you believe in, and you're doing things in the right way, the money will follow you. I believe that now. Like once you're doing something that you're passionate about, that you feel is your mission, the money will find its way to, if you work hard enough. So the action has to happen, but you know, you'll get what you're looking for, but you have to put in the work to do it. But what money does is it will provide the freedom to be able to move in the directions where you can still follow things that you want to do. So say if I was making $10 million a year, I'm not going to become some like pretentious prick. I'm going to be like, what can I do with this to help other people? Or it just gives you the freedom to be able to maybe impact a larger number of people. So I'm not saying like I'm not welcoming money into my life. That's absolutely not what I'm saying. But I'm saying it just can't be, that can't be your goal. It needs to be just a resource that you'll use to help get you to a spot that you're able to help be the best you and help other people be the best them.
And it forces you to put in the effort necessary to get the money when you give a crap about what you're doing. So when I care and I'm really into it, then I'm going to spend way more time, and putting in all that energy is going to eventually lead to me being successful, versus if I don't care about it and I'm just looking for the paycheck, then I'm just trying to do the bare minimum to get the money or whatever someone tells me is enough, and versus like for this, like, it's not like we're making money off of this, but like I do the things that I'm doing right now. I do enjoy them, but I'm working for that to help me, put food on the table, and then to also help me and allow me to do this and the freedom to do this. And I'm hoping that later on, this will allow me to just, this can be my main source of income, but I can do all those things, and it helps it allows me to have some freedoms when we have these like other jobs, or like, when we paint apartments or something like that. So.
And you mentioned that also, to bring it back to that, where you were talking about him not liking painting, and it was really hard. And he started his own business at a really young age. He took a risk, and it's something that I learned from him, was just that where he gambled on himself. He didn't go to college. He was, but he was such a hard worker that he took that risk and he gambled on himself. And it was something that I know for me, for such a long time, I was really afraid to take a risk to gamble on myself. So I look back at a life lesson that he taught me was to, one, be able to take a risk early on and gamble on yourself. And then two, just the value of that hard day's work. And like, I remember just watching him like bust his ass, and he physically would put himself out there in a way that a lot of people, growing up, I didn't see other people's dads look like our father. He was always really in good shape. And he showed us like the value of like an honest day's work, without a doubt. Right.
Yeah. That was all the time with him. He would work all the time. He was always like, there wasn't a sick day. There wasn't like, he wouldn't call out. He wouldn't do that. He went. What did he like, twisted his ankle, or what was his Achilles or something? Remember that one time, and and he went in
with a paint bucket on the other arm.
Yes. And he didn't stop working from there. And I would look at him like he's crazy. And I'm like, and no matter what, it would be 2 feet of snow, and it's like a state of an emergency. And he would go into work. We'd shovel out the driveway, and I would go with him into work. And, at first I again, I feel like everyone feels this way, but they like resent their father in a way for like, pushing and being, not like empathetic and not understanding where I'm coming from, or feeling like he's just like emotionless, right, in a way. But there's so much that we could take away from that, with what he had, and like the little things that we can take that make him who he is, and like that I respect the hell out of him for. So it opened up my eyes, and I feel like most of my life I looked at him like I don't want to be like that. It's like, why? I don't have to be exactly like that, but I could take a bunch of lessons from watching him and working with him, and then all the other people that I had in my life. So
yeah, and just that idea of not letting the outside factors like control where he was going. And he worked. The number of times he would drive home from painting, and there would be an ice bag on his back, and he would be popping Motrin like they were jelly beans. And his shoulder, his wrist, his back, his like, there were so many like physical ailments that he had, and he worked through all that. So when I think about like levels of complaint that I have in my life, like, what am I going to fucking complain about? Thinking about what our father was able to do and put up with to provide for us in a way that we were always comfortable, going as we were younger, we were comfortable with it. And it taught us those life lessons. So there might be things that we push back, like, well, I'm not going to communicate in the same way, and maybe the way that I interact in this way might be a little bit different. But ultimately, like when I look back, it's like with this level of like these life lessons that he taught us are life lessons that we can continue, not in the same exact way, but they're life lessons that we would take and utilize in how we're interacting with people moving forward in business, in our professional lives, and our personal lives as well.
And that goes back to the, like, I don't know if we want to get into it here because I think we could have a whole nother talk about, like, that goes into like the masculine and feminine energy, right? And you don't have to look at it as far as like man versus woman. You could just look at it as energies, right? So just put in whoever you want into that category. But our father was a very masculine energy, but to almost to his detriment. Like, he got places, but there were so many places that he was lacking, right? Like certain things that he didn't have. He didn't have that compassion. He didn't have that, like maybe he tried to, but it was really hard for him to talk about anything to do with emotions ever. He could never do that. So like, but you saw what he was able to do. And like, you know, everything that we had, he worked his ass off to get it. He never got handouts ever. He busted his ass to get the house that we had, to have the property that we had, to make sure that we all were able to go to school and we were all able to do these things. And again, I'm so grateful for that. But the issue was that because I looked at that as almost like toxic in a way, then I went to the other side of it, more of like a feminine energy type, you know what I mean? And then I started to become, and again, not that there's anything wrong with this, but I feel like I would become more in touch with my emotions, right? And I would go, so like, I would almost fight because I resented him and he would piss me off and I didn't want to be like that. I started to err on the side of more of like a feminine energy, you know? So I would consider myself more feminine energy than masculine energy because I was so, that made me almost, not that, you know, feminine energy is all anxiety and stuff like that, but I was very like introspective. I was looking inward all the time. I was thinking about other people. I was thinking about how you felt and how I feel and that's good, and too much of anything is not good, you know? So I think finding that balance between the two is big because I think he was on the totally other end. And then I took it and went on the other end. And I think I'm starting to sort of find that in between part of it, if that makes sense.
It's certainly there's a fluidity to it. It's not this like static thing where you're stuck in this spot. You can kind of, mold in between the two different things. And the way that he was, like, he definitely, like, there wasn't a lot of emotion shown, but I think that a lot of it would have been based on how he was raised and the interactions that he saw between, his parents who, you didn't really get a chance to meet. Well, you didn't meet his father. He died when I was really young, but even, you didn't have a lot of experience with, his mom. He died when she was she died when you were pretty young as well. So like the interactions that he saw with his own family probably influenced like how he showed up. But I've also noticed like the way that he showed his emotions towards us was, providing experiences for people to interact. Like he would always throw parties and have our teams there. And he would make these videos for us. And, like it was like pictures of us with music. And that was him expressing, I love you without saying, right. Like, this is me showing you how much I care about you by doing these like ceremonial type things. And looking back, I certainly can recognize that and like how much time and effort went into doing those things. So maybe he didn't say, Anthony, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. Look at it, but the way he showed that in a different way. And I've even noticed now, yesterday was his 69th birthday, right? And so, just how he's able to just communicate with us on a different level and be able to do that now. So, even his journey has been an interesting one.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have Dad on. You and Dad should do a, kind of a panel discussion. And the reason why I say that is I'm going to be on a podcast next week it's called Men on Purpose. And so the guy who hosts the podcast, his name is Ian Lobos. And I had a Zoom meeting with him last week, and he interviewed his dad more than once. And he said, I didn't do this for any kind of recognition with the podcast. He's like, I want to have a video, a time-stamped video of me interacting with my dad and asking him questions that I could look back on and show to my kids one day. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is brilliant. I was like, I mean, just you and I interacting this way, but I want to have dad on and be able to talk to dad and mom and maybe Tara and Megan or whoever, to like, just to be able to memorialize those interactions and those conversations and like pick people's brains about, like our upbringing and this and that. I just thought that was really brilliant that he does that.
No one gets it. Not many people get a chance to be interviewed. You can go your whole life and have, aside from like a BS introduction somewhere being like, my name is this and I like this and here's what I do, whatever, versus just like someone in depth really getting into your experiences, life, and what you've been through and what makes you who you are and things that you've learned. And like, that's what, like, our conversation the other week, like I said, I learned so much about myself just from talking about myself, because very rarely do you speak about all of this stuff. Like, I started writing it down, but that was only like a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, that I started journaling and stuff for that reason exactly. But not many people do that. And they have all these emotions that almost like you bring up when you talk to somebody about it. And unless you have a therapist, and sometimes even in therapy too, you feel a little uncomfortable. It takes a while to feel like you could talk to this person. And then you have someone you've known all your life, and you just end up getting into it and you learn so much about them, So I think that's a great idea. I would love to do that.
Yeah. If mom and dad are sitting around with their pipes and their smoking jackets and their spots of tea. Do you have an English guy? Do you do an English guy at all?
I could probably do an English guy. I'm sure if I would need to work on it a little bit, but I think
I'll interview him next time. He needs to have a really good name. Like, I don't know, Thurston or like.
No, I think his name needs to be like Leslie.
Yeah, I like that.
Like
Witherspoon.
Withersbait. Leslie Withersbait. I like that.
The third.
What do you say?
The third. He needs
the third. Like, of course. There's not one Leslie Withersbait.
So that'll be. I'll talk to him on the next.
Yeah, we'll get that going. I'll start working on constructing his backstory.
So that conversation like leads me to the thought of memorializing conversations, because you never know. You always, like you set up in life. You, like, I could say, do you remember the first time you kissed a girl? Do you remember the first time you passed a test or like hit a home run or whatever it is? Like, I remember the first time my kids walked. I remember their first day of school. I remember the first time that I got a job or whatever it is. Like, you remember the first times, but what you don't have is that recognition that there's going to be the last time that something happens. There's not that point where you say, oh man, that was the last time like that I read my daughter a story before she went to bed. Mm-hmm. There's the last time you play catch with your father, whatever it is. So to one, go into a moment recognizing that any moment can be that last experience that you have, not only as people age out of different scenarios or situations, but it could be the last interaction you have, and you're not guaranteed anything in life. Like, when you're born, the only thing that you're guaranteed is that you will die one day. That's the only thing that's guaranteed, right?
The only constant is that in itself. It's that tomorrow is never promised. It's never guaranteed. You have no idea if you're going to wake up tomorrow or you're going to see the people that you saw today. You're going to see them tomorrow. You have no idea, and that's a really hard thing to understand. And the only time you really understand that is when you lose someone. And that's it. Death, granted, I don't like to use death as like the worst thing ever, you know what I mean? Because there's a whole spiritual aspect to it that you could look at, but death shouldn't be the reason why we start to value people's lives. You know what I mean? Think about how many times that we would go to wakes and we didn't speak to that person who passed in our family for months before that. We didn't, and then we think about how much more we could have learned about them, or their story wasn't told We couldn't hear their like things. They're dying without us knowing certain things about them, or like it just that crushes me. You know what I mean? To think about. And it's like, why do I need that in order to appreciate that and to understand that that could be it? So why not go into every conversation assuming it's and you don't look at it as a bad thing. You just look at like be here now, be with them, be present, be passionate. You know, when you say that you love your kids, love them and say you love them, like they're not going to hear it again.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, and have them feel that. You could tell when someone's being authentic and they really care. And like every conversation that you're having, like you could even look at it as far as that. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to have this conversation again because I might not be here tomorrow. So let me learn something from today. Let me embrace this person who might not be in my life ever again. And when you start to think about it that way, it's like the whole world changes and your whole outlook starts to get a little different.
And I think people do it right after there's, some kind of an event that happens in people's lives. So like maybe there's someone that, they get stricken with cancer and all of a sudden like, well, now I need to make sure that I'm spending time with that person, or they just lost a loved one. And I wish I would have had those moments but now as you're listening to this, why not take every opportunity that you can now and really feel into those moments. I'm not only talking about just like life and death type situations, but why not just everything that you're showing up with in life? Last week, my daughter had a softball tournament in South Jersey. And so it was a hike, she had a 2-day tournament and me and the kids are driving down there. And I mean, like they'll make fun of me for this, but when we have long drives, like one way we'll listen to music and we'll all put on songs we listen to. So we'll listen to like Roses by Outkast, and then we'll put on like, Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, and then some gangster rap, and we kind of go through this musical journey. And then one way I'm going to put on a podcast. And so we're listening to a podcast on the way down there, and it was Jay Shetty interviewing Will Smith. And on the podcast, it just, as they were talking, it was an unbelievable interview. But the second thing was, I said to my daughter, I said, appreciate, because the weather was shitty and it's like, oh, I can't believe we got to go down here. Oh, Dad, you don't understand. And I was like, listen, Jules, like, here's the thing. You're not guaranteed anything in life. You're not guaranteed to be able to play in a softball game tomorrow. So why not take this opportunity to like give 100% of who you are to whatever you're putting yourself into, and really appreciate every single time she's a catcher, every single catch, every single time the pitcher throws the ball and you set up, every single time, every at bat, every pitch, like experience it in that way, because you're not promised tomorrow. As a coach, I would tell the kids, we made it into the championship basketball game a couple of years ago. And I told the kids before the game, when I gave them the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. And, the end of that poem is, if you could fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything it's in it, and which is more, you'll be a man, my son. And I read that line out to them and I gave him the poem. Denny's like, Dad, are you fucking kidding me? We're getting ready to play in a championship game right now and you're quoting Rudyard.
And how many times has he heard that quote now? I feel like you used to read him that before he would go to bed. That was his like bedtime story.
Yeah, like put headphones on in his ears when he was like 7 months old. But I honestly believe that. I told the kids before the game, I'm like, listen, I would give my left nut to go back and compete in a game, and like being in like 7th, 8th grade, being able to compete in a basketball game, in a baseball game, whatever it is, like being able to compete on that level. Like, you guys just enjoy this moment, go out there and fully embrace it. I mean, there's going to be nerves associated with, but like fully experience the shit that you're going through. So like, I definitely believe in that idea of, you want to really embrace every moment with every interaction, and like treat every interaction you have with another individual. Like, if I were never to see you again, I want to make sure that we're on a spot where like, like, I think you are my best friend in the world. And I love you. And like, I'm so proud of you, like making sure that I have that conversation. But then also outside of that part of it, like losing someone, just every experience that you have, like if you're going to go train today, don't half-ass it. Like, train like today's your last day. Like, if I couldn't walk tomorrow and I, came up with some bullshit excuse to not run today or to not train today, I would tomorrow be like, I wish I would have taken that one opportunity. Like, now that I'm missing this in my life, that last time, if I knew that it was the last time, how would you experience it?
That it's so fun. Like this goes back to me being like a hypochondriac and stuff, but like, I remember there would be times when first of all, when I would go to bed, I would always be worried that I wouldn't wake up, right? And so I would sit there and think in my head, I'm like, oh crap. Like, and of course, right before you're going to bed, that's probably not what you want going through your head, is that you're going to never wake up again. Or I would like close my eyes, or we would have to do something like we're doing something in class where we need to like close our eyes and breathe or think about something, or in like the shower, and I close my eyes and I get like this little moment of panic where like, what if I open up my eyes and I can't see anymore, right? Oh my God, what am I going to do? So it was funny because like I was meditating the one day, and it was actually at your house. And this is why I do it, because there's no way in hell I would have ever thought about something like this if I didn't meditate. And it's like, to me, it's not the absence of thought. It's just the idea of taking a second to hear your thoughts, because they come and they're in and out and they're this and that. And you can kind of just be like, huh. And it's all within you that this is going on. So like, I had that same moment when I was meditating, because my eyes were closed and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, what if I can't open it? What if I open up my eyes and I can't see? And then I sat with it and I didn't open up my eyes, and I like felt what it would feel like to not see anymore, to not see the sunrise anymore, to not see the people in my family anymore, to not be able to like visually see the people that I love. And like, I had this moment of just like, it wasn't like acceptance, but it was just like, this is what it is. And, and I was able to kind of like let it wash over me in a sense. And then I still did my whole thing, and I opened up my eyes, and it was just like an amazing moment of gratitude when I opened up my eyes again, just being like, that's a thing. People we forget that so many people go through all of these things, and we take it for granted all the time, these things. And the time when you appreciate it is when you don't have it. And I don't believe that needs to happen. You don't need to lose something in order to appreciate what you had. You could sit there and be like, man, I need to show up in every aspect of my life. If I tell someone I'm going to be somewhere, I better be there wholeheartedly. All of my energy is in that moment with that person, in the gym working out. I told myself I was going to spend an hour in the gym. I can't be anywhere else but in that gym working out and busting my ass. If I'm with the kids that I'm working with, then I need to make sure that I am giving them all of my energy, because they showed up and they expect me to show up for them. Where else do I have to be? I'm going to be on my phone. I'm going to think about other stuff. That's so unfair to that person, So that was like a crazy realization for me when I was sitting there, just like exactly like you talked about. So it's hard to have that recognition in a way, but.
So to kind of put a closure on our conversation today, I just wanted to memorialize a couple things. One is just the routine that you go through with your hair care. I had the idea that it was taking upwards of a half hour for you to get that flip.
Give or take, yeah, depending on if it's, yeah. Keep going.
And what did you call that flippy thing on the tie? Because that'll be in the title of the podcast.
It was like a drop. It was like a drop. Did I say
a drip?
A drop? I know. I think I said drop.
Drop.
It was like I feel like someone's going to be like, that's not what it's called.
It's not what it's called. Please correct us if you can figure out what we're going to call this.
If you are offended in any way by what I called it, please let me know. Like a front drop.
We'll call it the front drop. All right. So I want to title the episode the front drop will be a part of it. I definitely want to, the idea of, just appreciating, or expressing gratitude or appreciating the moment, being fully present in those moments. I like the last time will be a part of it, the front drop, something, and then the last time, because that's really important. I mean, I got choked up as I was talking about the last time, that idea where that moment won't happen again. But I'm just going through that journey of thinking about our own upbringing in our childhood, and just giving some grace to understanding, while we might have had some, negative thoughts about the way we were raised, the life lessons that we learned and understood from our father, especially through our upbringing. And we got to do an episode just about mom, definitely have mom on.
Well, that's the thing. We're talking about dad, but mom's a whole nother, that's
mom was the glue that held it together, right?
100%, you know what I mean? But like the thing is the reason why I think we talk about dad so much, because of the fact that like I had him under a certain scope where it was like negative in a way. And I don't think that at all. You know, I don't have negative feelings towards our mother or father at all, you know, but dad growing up, I did because of just, you know, again, just like I had to do things I didn't want to do. You know, he pushed me to do all these certain things. It was like, don't you understand how I feel? You know, like, and so, yeah, it's just,
hug me. Why won't you hug me?
Yeah, just say you love me. And it's like, that's, you know, and like you said, he had a different way of doing it. And that's awesome. I love that he had that. It was his way and it works for him. And it was hard for him to communicate it. So he did it having DJ Bob set up, you know, a collage of photos for us with music in the background when we had a significant moment in our life. So it's
not if you're popping chest hair right now, if you're popping some chest lettuce. Julie's son William calls it chest lettuce. He got a couple of pieces of chest there. He called it chest lettuce. I thought that was...
I call it taco meat.
That's terrifying.
Okay.
So, Dad, if you're listening to this, you know, with your gold chain and your Italian horn popped out there, we certainly appreciate everything. And, you know, we didn't aim to talk about that today, but we love you and we appreciate everything. You know, without a doubt. So that's little shout out to Pop there.
Love you, Dad.
So we will, you know, we'll definitely have another conversation. I'd like to do this once a week, brother. I appreciate it. I enjoy the conversations with you and just, you know, trying to pull out a life lesson from just us having no script or no topic whatsoever. It means a lot to me, and I'm glad you're a part of this Building Men journey. You definitely add so much value. Being able to, you know, share your perspective and, you know, kind of help me work through. It's almost like you talked about with therapy, helping me work through a lot of the shit that I had. Just via conversations is really helpful.
All this stuff that we're talking about, I think about all the time, but I never communicate it, you know? So it's so nice just to have a place, like a comfortable, judgment-free area that I could just sort of let loose and be myself. And, you know, I have so many ideas and so many things in my head and so many things I read and hear. And I just like to be able to have this conversation. It just makes it like, I have all these notepads of just like random stuff. And so I feel like being able to communicate it with you just puts it in one spot and it helps me to kind of articulate the whole thing and make sense of it. So this has been, I love it. I could do this, you know, whenever. So.
All right. So we'll schedule something for next week. Anything you wanna put out there? Anything you want to talk about your TikToks? Your TikToks are really creative. It's a lot of Marty, your dog. Marty's like a fucking.
I know. I'm trying to I started with the food, right? Which I was trying to cook a new meal. It was like Monday, and it was the first one that I screwed up. I blew it. It looked terrible. It tasted great, but you know. The phone doesn't know that it's going to taste great. You know, it's all about how it looks. So then I realized Marty I think he's the key to my fame and success on TikTok and Instagram. So I just got to keep going with that. I'm just going to document his life. It's just going to be a Marty thing. I think I'm going to start going down that road.
He's the biggest lover in the world. When you talk about that masculine and feminine energy, you know, Marty is he was my girlfriend for a couple months when I was living with you.
Yeah, it was getting weird. I know. It's getting weird.
Weird.
A lot of empty peanut butter jars. It was like, where is this going?
I'll tell you, no one's ever licked my ear the way Marty did.
He's good at that. Listen, that was the first thing we worked on. It was like sit, and then here's how you.
Right. All right, this took a turn there.
Okay, yeah, we could have kept going.
Let's end this now. So follow Anthony Meralda. Coach.
So it's Coach Anthony Meralda for Instagram, and then it's Anthony and Marty for TikTok. So I changed my name for that because I'm just
Anthony and A-N-D Marty.
Yes, yeah. Anthony and Marty is the Instagram one. So
all right, and to reach out to me, it's building.men on Instagram, Building Men Podcast on Facebook, buildingmencoach@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, Anthony. Appreciate you being here. If I never see you again, I express my extreme gratitude for. Yes. For you, I love you, and I will talk to you soon, brother. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Building Men.